I still remember my first day at Armoire Studios, a fashion brand known for its bold campaigns and louder personalities. Everyone here seemed to talk in headlines. Confident, witty, loud, like every conversation was an audition for who could be seen the most. Me, I just wanted to work. The elevator doors opened to the 6th floor, an open space office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. The kind of place that smelled like ambition and expensive perfume. A tall woman in pointed heels greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be Rachel. Welcome to Armoire. I'm Jenna, head of creative. You'll be working under me in brand strategy." Her voice was crisp, like someone who'd never been interrupted. I nodded, smiling politely. "It's really nice to meet you." She looked at me for a second longer than necessary, like she was already trying to figure me out. As we walked through the office, she pointed out the departments: marketing, design, influencer relations. Everything looked sleek and fast-paced. Then she stopped at a glass desk tucked into a corner. "This will be you. We move quickly here, so I hope you're ready." "I am," I said softly. "Good," she smiled again. "We like confidence here." I wasn't sure if that was encouragement or a warning. I sat down, turned on my monitor, and tried to blend in. The room buzzed with energy, people laughing, debating, pitching. I could barely hear myself think. Every time I opened my mouth to say something, someone else filled the space. Louder, sharper. So I stopped trying to talk, I just listened. By noon, my inbox already had 5 tasks from Jenna. Drafts, presentation slides, mood boards. Every email ended with the same line. "Need this by EOD." It didn't scare me. I was used to working under pressure. But it didn't take long to notice that people here didn't really see you unless you talked fast and loud. When I sent my first campaign concept, a quiet minimalist branding idea called Elegance in Silence, Jenna replied within minutes. "Too subtle, Armoire is not a whisper, it's a shout." I stared at the screen for a long moment. I thought about explaining the deeper message, how silence can be power, but I didn't. I just replied, "Got it." That was the first time I realized, in this company, silence was mistaken for weakness. But I also knew something they didn't. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say, it just means you're choosing when to say it. 2 weeks later, we had our first Monday strategy meeting, the one where everyone pitched their ideas for the upcoming spring collection campaign. The theme was unapologetically you. Jenna stood at the front, clipboard in hand, calling out names. One by one, the team presented bright slides, loud slogans, bold voices. When it was my turn, Jenna looked at me almost surprised. "Rachel, you've got something for us." I nodded, "Yes, I do." The room got quiet, not out of respect, but curiosity. The quiet girl was about to talk. I clicked my remote and my slides came on, muted tones. Clean typography, models in natural light, minimal makeup, no filters. I said softly, "What if unapologetically you wasn't about being loud or rebellious, but about being real? About confidence that doesn't need to prove itself?" A pause, then one of the senior designers chuckled, "So like being shy." Laughter rippled across the table. I felt my cheeks heat up, but I kept my composure. "No, like being authentic." Jenna's eyes flicked to me. "It's a nice concept, Rachel, but it's not very Armoire. We need something that demands attention." I nodded again, "Okay." That night I stayed late, long after everyone left. I sat in the glow of my monitor, reworking the campaign. It wasn't that I disagreed with them. I just believed there was a different way to stand out. Loudness wasn't the only kind of power. Over the next few weeks, I became known as the quiet one. People said it with a smirk, like it was an identity I hadn't chosen. In brainstorming sessions, I'd make suggestions only to hear someone else repeat the same thing 5 minutes later, and suddenly, everyone would clap. I stopped correcting them, I started documenting. Every version, every note, every idea. If I wasn't going to be heard, I'd make sure my work spoke for me. Some people speak to be seen. I was learning to be seen through what I built. Then came the turning point. A month before the spring campaign launch, our lead creative director, the one everyone admired, quit suddenly for a rival brand. Panic spread through the office like wildfire. Deadlines loomed, meetings doubled. The company needed someone to take over immediately. Jenna took charge, barking orders, everyone scrambled. And I quietly volunteered to stay late, to fix what others couldn't. Over the next 2 weeks I barely slept. I redesigned presentations, rebuilt layouts, drafted product stories. Nobody asked me to, but when something went wrong I was already there to make it right. By the end of the second week, I'd rewritten almost 60% of the campaign. Still, no one seemed to notice. Until one morning. It was a Friday. Jenna walked in holding a coffee and a stack of printouts. She was frowning. "Who updated the concept boards?" she asked. "These new visuals, they're clean, confident, quiet. This isn't the direction we had." I froze. Then she paused, scanning the images. "But it's good," she admitted. "It's really good." Someone from the back said, "Rachel's been staying late every night. Maybe it was her." Her eyes turned toward me, and for the first time since I started, she didn't look through me, she looked at me. That's when I learned something powerful. You don't always have to raise your voice to be heard. Sometimes consistency is loud enough. That afternoon, Jenna asked me to join the final campaign review team. It wasn't a promotion, not yet. But it was the first door that had opened because of my results, not my volume. And as I packed my bag that night, I whispered to myself. They said I was too quiet to lead. Maybe they were right for now, but I'll let my results do the talking. After that Friday, things felt different, at least for a while. People who barely noticed me before started greeting me in the hallway. Jenna copied me on more emails. But recognition in a company like Armoire Studios was like perfume. It faded fast if you weren't constantly reapplying it. And I was never the type to spray it on thick. A week later, the team gathered in the glass conference room to present our updated spring campaign to the executives. Jenna led the pitch. Everyone sat around the long marble table, staring at the massive screen as she clicked through slides, the same ones I'd stayed up nights perfecting. She spoke confidently. "We decided to take a more understated, confident tone this season. We're calling it Elegance in Silence." My stomach tightened. That was my title, my original concept, the one she'd dismissed on my second week. She didn't mention me, not once. I told myself it didn't matter, that the work spoke for itself. But the truth is, silence stings a little more when someone else fills it with their name. After the presentation, everyone clapped. The execs were impressed, said it was fresh and mature. As we left the room, Jenna turned to me and smiled. "Good work, Rachel, you're learning fast." I smiled back, "Thanks." That was all, no confrontation, no credit, just quiet acceptance. I learned quickly that at Armoire, success wasn't just about doing good work, it was about being seen doing it. And I was invisible by default. The next few months blurred together. We rolled out the spring campaign and it exploded online. Fashion blogs praised the subtlety. Influencers reposted our minimalist visuals. Sales jumped. Everyone celebrated. Champagne in the office, team selfies, shoutouts on Slack. My name didn't come up once. I started to wonder if being quiet was a flaw after all. Maybe they were right. Maybe leadership did belong to the loud ones, the confident talkers, the ones who could turn ideas into applause. But every time that thought crept in, something deeper pushed back. I didn't want to become like them. I just wanted to prove there was another way to lead. Through competence, through calm, through results. Then came the annual mid-year review. Everyone sat in small glass rooms with their department heads, going over performance reports. When it was my turn, Jenna glanced at my file. "You're doing solid work, Rachel, consistent, reliable, but..." There it was, always a but. She continued, "You need to be more visible, speak up more in meetings, show people you're confident." "I am confident," I said softly. She smiled politely. "I know, but no one else does." I wanted to ask if it was my job to convince people of that, or hers to notice, but I didn't, I just nodded. That review replayed in my mind for days. Reliable, consistent, the kind of words that look safe on paper but never get you promoted. I wasn't angry, I was just determined. If they wouldn't hear my voice, I'd make sure they couldn't ignore my work. A few weeks later, the company began prepping for the summer collection launch, their biggest event of the year. Jenna assigned me to assist on logistics and branding, not to lead, just to assist. But I didn't complain. I started staying later again, fixing what others missed, refining slides, polishing data. One evening around 9 p.m, the office was empty except for me, and one other person. Eli, the head of analytics, a quiet guy who usually kept to himself. He walked over and said, "You've been here late a lot." I looked up from my laptop and smiled. I like finishing things. He nodded. "Yeah, I've noticed. You're the only one who actually reads through every report." I chuckled softly. I like details. He hesitated, then said, "You know, the engagement numbers on your spring concept were the highest we've ever seen. I ran the data myself." "Really?" "Yeah, you should have gotten credit for that." I paused, unsure what to say. "Thanks," I finally whispered. That small moment, those few words, meant more than any company-wide applause. Someone saw me. That's when I realized, sometimes it only takes one person to make you believe you're not invisible. By late July, the summer campaign was in chaos. Our new creative director, hired after the previous one quit, had strong opinions but no clear direction. Deadlines slipped, budgets stretched, tension filled the air. And then one Monday morning, Jenna didn't show up, no call, no email, nothing. By noon, HR sent out a short message. Effective immediately, Jenna Williams is no longer with Armoire Studios. The office went silent. People whispered, rumors spread, disagreement with executives, conflict with the new director, no one knew for sure. But one thing was clear, her team, our team, was leaderless. It's strange how quickly power vacuums form. One moment everyone's following someone. The next they're looking around, waiting for whoever speaks first. And once again it wasn't me. It was Logan, one of the senior strategists, loud, confident, charming. He stepped up, started running meetings, assigning roles, taking charge. People followed, because noise feels like leadership when no one else is speaking. But behind his bravado I could see the cracks. His numbers didn't add up. His ideas were flashy but empty. And the campaign was falling apart. One Friday afternoon, the CEO, Miranda Lake, called an emergency meeting. She was elegant, sharp, and known for her intolerance of failure. We gathered in the main conference room. She looked at the team, then at the half-finished presentation on the screen. "This isn't Armoire quality," she said flatly. "We launch in 6 weeks. If this campaign doesn't impress, people will be replaced." Silence filled the room. Then she turned to Logan. "You're leading this, right?" "Yes, ma'am," he said confidently. "We'll fix it." I wanted to say something, to tell her the campaign lacked direction, that we needed to rethink the strategy, but my voice stayed stuck in my throat. In that moment, I hated my silence, not because it made me invisible, but because it made me complicit in watching something I could fix fall apart. That night I went home and couldn't sleep. So I opened my laptop and started working from scratch. I built a new version of the campaign, data-driven, emotionally grounded, visually clean. I called it substance over noise. It was everything Armoire was supposed to stand for, and everything it had forgotten. For 2 weeks I worked in secret. Illy helped me with numbers quietly. We rebuilt every slide, every tagline, every budget forecast. I didn't know what to do with it. I just knew I couldn't let the current plan fail. Then came the final prep meeting. The CEO was scheduled to review the campaign draft before presenting it to investors. The team gathered. Logan looked nervous. His version was messy, inconsistent visuals, weak storytelling. As he fumbled through slides, Miranda frowned. "This feels hollow," she said. "It doesn't say anything." Her eyes scanned the room. "Is this really our best?" No one spoke. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I did. I raised my hand. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "I have another version. It's not official, but I think it might work better." Every head turned. Logan's jaw tightened. "Rachel, this isn't." Miranda cut him off. "Show me." My hands trembled as I plugged in my USB drive and switched the display. Slide 1 appeared, substance over noise. For the next 15 minutes I walked her through every part of the campaign. The visuals, the message, the market data. I spoke softly but with conviction. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Miranda said, "That's the campaign. That's who we are." She turned to Logan. Rachel leads this from now on. It happened so fast I barely processed it. All those weeks of being overlooked, ignored, underestimated, and suddenly every eye in the room was on me. Not because I was loud, but because I had results. That night I stayed late again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The city lights glowed outside the windows. For the first time I wasn't the quiet girl in the corner, I was leading. And yet I hadn't changed who I was. They said I was too quiet to lead. They were wrong. Leadership isn't about volume, it's about value, and I was just getting started. Leadership, I learned, doesn't begin with a title. It begins the moment people start looking to you for direction, even when you didn't ask for it. After that meeting, everything changed. Overnight, my inbox doubled. People started copying me on projects I'd never been part of, and the same team that once ignored me was now waiting for my approval. It was surreal and terrifying. When I walked into the office Monday morning, a few people clapped quietly. "Congrats, Rachel," someone said. "About time," whispered another. But not everyone was happy. Logan barely looked at me. When he did, it was with that tight, polite smile people wear when they're trying not to show resentment. He had led this team for months, loudly, confidently, and now I, the quiet one, had replaced him. That first week as acting campaign lead, I kept my head down. I didn't make speeches or send long motivational emails. I just organized the chaos. I set up clear timelines, delegated tasks, and reopened communication with suppliers who had been ignored. Instead of giving orders, I asked questions. Instead of demanding updates, I offered help. Slowly, the noise in the office started to turn into rhythm. It wasn't magic, it was clarity. When people feel seen, they start showing up differently. Eli, the analytics lead, stopped by my desk one evening. "You know," he said, leaning on the divider, "I think people actually like working for you." I looked up half smiling. "I'm not sure working for is the right word." He shrugged. "Maybe not, but they listen to you." That meant more to me than any formal title. By mid-August, we were 3 weeks from launch. The Substance Over Noise campaign was almost ready, a blend of classic and modern, highlighting real women instead of models. We shot in natural light, styled locally made fabrics and ditched the overused glamour filters. It was raw, elegant, and honest. When the first preview video played in the boardroom, people went silent. Not because it was boring. For the first time, Armoire Studios looked like the brand I had always believed it could be. Not just loud fashion, but real confidence. Still, not everyone was rooting for me. Logan's frustration grew with each passing day. He'd interrupt me in meetings, question my decisions, even send alternative ideas directly to upper management, trying to undermine me subtly. I ignored it at first. But one night, around 8 p.m., I discovered something that changed everything. I was reviewing the campaign files when I noticed that our main presentation, the one for investors, had been edited. Several slides were missing. Key data replaced with outdated figures. And the file name, Substance Over Noise VFINAL Logan. My stomach dropped. He was trying to sabotage me, to make my version look unprepared in front of the CEO. There's a special kind of quiet that comes when you realize someone's trying to erase your work. It's not fear, it's focus. Instead of confronting him, I backed up every version of the files. Then I went home and built a new presentation, tighter, cleaner, bulletproof. The next morning at 9 a.m., the investor preview began. Logan volunteered to help run the slides. When he plugged in his laptop, I calmly said, "We'll use mine instead. I updated the latest version last night." He froze, our eyes met, and I saw it, the panic. He smiled stiffly, "Of course." I walked to the front, connected my laptop, and started the presentation. The screen lit up with clean visuals, precise numbers, and a powerful tagline. Confidence doesn't need an audience, it needs purpose. As I spoke, I could feel the room shift. The investors nodded, engaged. The CEO watched intently, her expression unreadable but focused. When it ended, there was silence, then applause. Miranda, the CEO, stood and said, "This is what leadership looks like, thoughtful, strategic, steady." She looked directly at me. "Well done, Rachel." That afternoon, I returned to my desk, exhausted but light. Logan avoided me. He wasn't fired, but he knew his moment had passed. I didn't gloat, quiet victory is still victory. They tried to define leadership by volume, I redefined it by impact. The next few weeks were a blur. The campaign rolled out across every platform, billboards, social media, fashion magazines. The response was overwhelming. Articles praised moi, refreshing authenticity. One headline read: "Fashion finds its voice in silence, moi's quiet revolution." I read that one twice. It felt poetic. The company threw a launch party downtown, champagne, music, media, cameras flashing. People congratulated me non-stop, some even joked, "Guess being quiet worked out, huh?" I just smiled. They didn't understand it wasn't about being quiet, it was about listening long enough to find the right words. Then, as the night wound down, Miranda called for attention. She stood by the stage, holding a microphone. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who reminded us what real leadership looks like, someone who proved that strength doesn't always shout." She gestured toward me, Rachel Monroe. The room applauded. My heart raced, not from nerves but from gratitude. I didn't expect a speech, but I knew I had to say something. I took the mic, looked around and said softly, "Thank you, I've learned that leadership isn't about who talks the most, it's about who listens best. Sometimes silence isn't absence, it's awareness. And when you build something meaningful, your work speaks louder than words ever could." The applause that followed was gentle but real. Later that night, I stood on the rooftop terrace alone, looking out over the city lights. The same skyline I'd watched from my desk months ago, but everything felt different now. Eli joined me holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. He handed me one. "You did it." I smiled. "We did it." He raised his glass, "To quiet leaders." I clinked mine gently against his, "To results that talk." For the first time in my career, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself by being louder. I'd proven it by being consistent. And I realized, maybe the world doesn't need more noise. Maybe it just needs people brave enough to lead in silence. They say success changes people. But what they don't tell you is, sometimes, success just reveals who you were the whole time. After the launch, things at Moi Studios didn't just shift, they evolved. The campaign results exceeded every target. Sales up 38%, engagement up 200%, but beyond the numbers, something deeper happened. The culture started to quiet down. Meetings became less about who spoke the loudest, and more about what was being said. New interns who used to shrink at the conference table now found space to share ideas. People stopped interrupting each other. And it wasn't because of a memo or a policy, it was because they'd seen what quiet could accomplish. Miranda called me into her office 2 weeks after the launch. The view from her window stretched across the city, sleek towers, morning light glinting off glass. She gestured for me to sit. "Rachel," she said, folding her hands, "I wanted to personally thank you. You didn't just save a campaign, you set a new standard for this company." I smiled faintly. "Thank you, ma'am." She studied me for a long moment. "Tell me something," she said. "How did you stay so calm through all of it?" I hesitated, then answered honestly. I stopped trying to be heard and focused on being useful. She nodded slowly, smiling. "That's rare, don't lose it." Then she handed me an envelope. "Effective next month, I want you to lead the new brand integrity division. Full creative control." I blinked. It wasn't just a promotion, it was a declaration. It didn't feel like a victory over anyone else. It felt like a victory over the version of me who once believed quiet wasn't enough. The announcement went company-wide by noon. Emails poured in. Even Logan stopped by my desk that afternoon. He hovered awkwardly, hands in his pockets. "Hey," he said, "congrats, you earned it." I looked up and smiled. "Thanks." He hesitated, then added, "I didn't make it easy for you, I'm sorry for that." I nodded. We all learn differently. He exhaled, half smiling. "Guess I still have some learning to do." And for the first time, it felt like we were on the same side, just 2 people trying to understand what leadership really means. The following week, the marketing blog Creative Pulse published a feature on Moi's transformation. The headline read, "The Quiet Revolution, How One Woman's Calm Leadership Redefined a Fashion Empire." They interviewed Miranda, Eli, a few teammates, and finally me. The journalist asked, Do you think being quiet held you back? I smiled. No, it prepared me. Listening gives you perspective, and perspective gives you power. It's strange, when you stop trying to prove yourself, that's when people finally see your worth. 3 months later, I led my first campaign under the new division. We called it The Power of Poise. Instead of celebrity models, we featured employees, real people with real stories. Designers, seamstresses, assistants, the faces behind the brand. The ad's tagline read, "Grace isn't loud, it's lasting." When the campaign went live, it wasn't just beautiful, it was personal. It gave people a reason to feel proud of where they worked. The day of the public release, Miranda gathered everyone in the atrium. Reporters, cameras, bright lights. She stood at the podium, then smiled at me. Today we're celebrating not just a campaign, but a culture, one built on respect, depth, and quiet strength. And that began with one person who reminded us that leadership doesn't have to echo to be heard. She gestured toward me. The crowd turned, cameras flashed. For a second I froze, I wasn't used to this kind of attention. Then she added, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new Vice President of Brand Integrity, Rachel Monroe." Applause erupted. I'd imagined what recognition would feel like, the cheers, the spotlight. But in that moment, standing there under the lights, what I felt most wasn't pride. It was peace. Because I hadn't changed who I was to get here, just become more of myself. After the ceremony, I found a quiet corner on the balcony, away from the noise. The city glowed beneath the dusk sky, golden windows, slow-moving traffic, the hum of a world that never really stops. Eli joined me again, smiling. "So, VP Monroe, how does it feel?" I laughed softly, strangely calm. He nodded. "That's your superpower." I looked at him, then out at the skyline. "It's funny," I said. "When I started, people told me I was too quiet to lead, but I think the world has enough people shouting. It needs more people who listen." He raised his glass, "To the quiet ones." "To the ones who lead differently," I said. "Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stay true to who you are. Because results, real, undeniable results, make more noise than any voice ever could. And when your work speaks for you, you never have to raise your voice again.